What's up, boys and girls? Chris Flick here, Chris Flick Podcast, episode number 134. Today, this conversation, man, this episode, we're calling it Stop Cutting Kids from Sports, all right? Now, hear me out on this subject. I spent a good 10 plus years coaching football and wrestling. I've watched football sidelines dwindle. Those teams are getting smaller and smaller at the high school level. I've watched junior varsity teams. I've coached junior varsity teams where we went to games with like 15 kids. We had 5 offensive linemen. And do you know how many offensive linemen you need for a game? 5. If somebody got hurt, we were in big trouble. I've even worked with this coach that moved 2 kids' positions. He moved a tight end to tackle. He moved a fullback to guard because we only had 3 linemen for that game. Terrible idea. Do you know why? Because those kids never played the positions that they just got moved to, and there's kids standing behind them, quarterbacks and running backs, that are about to get a football. And if they don't know how to block up front, those kids are going to get destroyed. All right? Not a good thing. I've watched wrestling teams get smaller and smaller and smaller. I've coached at a small school. I coached junior high wrestling. That's grades 7th, 8th, and 9th. We would wrestle teams sometimes. Keep that in mind. There's potentially 3 grades that could all participate on this team. Some teams showed up with 3 or 4 kids. Meanwhile, we're there with 20 plus kids because I worked for a coach that was a great coach in terms of getting numbers out. And our kids would just have a day of nothing, really. A few kids would get a match. We would actually have to have a practice before our match just so those kids could get a little bit of a workout in so they're not just sitting idle for a day. Sports sidelines are dwindling. There's soccer teams in this area that have so small numbers. Keep in mind soccer, you could start this, there's hundreds of kids playing soccer at young ages, right? There's not JV teams at the high school level because of it. Field hockey numbers are dwindling. There's a lacrosse program at the high school level that might not be able to have a team because they don't have numbers. The rise of club sports, the rise of tryouts, the rise of, achievement in all areas of life, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's on the playing field, there's such a huge focus on the high achievers that a lot of the kids at the bottom level, the late bloomers, the kids that didn't hit puberty yet, or the kids that maybe just want to play sports for fun, they get kind of left in the wayside. And as a coach and as a teacher, the goal should be to get everybody. Let's try to turn everybody into an A student, not just the top end kids. We cannot coach just to the top end. We cannot teach just to the top end. We have to coach and teach to everybody. Now, when you cut kids at a young age, let's say you got an 8-year-old trying out for a sport. Let's say that kid doesn't make the team because they're not good enough. And let's just say the sport is soccer. You might be telling that 8-year-old, hey, maybe in the fall we could try a different sport. That kid may never return to soccer. But if your goal as a coach is to build a program, you want to keep as many kids out for soccer at a young age, for football, for wrestling. Let's keep as many kids out as possible at a young age. Those 50 kids in the youth might turn into 38 at the 5th and 6th, 7th grade level. And then that 38 might turn into 20. You get the idea, right? But you can't have incoming classes for sports with only 2, 1, 3 incoming freshmen, right? That's a recipe for disaster. The best teams that I've ever seen in any sport are the ones that have numbers. So it's got to be our focus at a young level to get the numbers up. And then not only get the numbers up, but keep them out for a sport. High school coaches that are able to get involved at a youth level, be involved there, be involved in that middle school program. That's that little bridge from youth to high school. That's that bridge from practice 2 nights a week at youth to practice, 5 days a week now. Things get a little bit more serious. You're going to lose kids there. You need to have good coaches there. You need to have a coach at the top, at the high school level, that is building the program from the ground up. And if you're losing kids, then you're doing something wrong. It might be time to reevaluate what you are doing and try to make the necessary changes. You don't cut kids, period, because it's going to affect your high school teams down the line here, all right? It's our job as coaches, it's our job as teachers, it's our job as parents, whoever we may be, to try to raise the floor up. Let's try to raise society up from the bottom a little bit here. Let's try to raise our team up. You're only as strong as your weakest link. That's a saying for a reason. You want the bottom end of your roster to be better players. You don't just cut them and say, see you later, go play a different sport. Because if you do that, you might lose them for life. And that's just the athletic side of things. In terms of physical activity, kids are not doing stuff anymore. Keep that in mind. Don't just worry about wins and losses when you're coaching that 8-year-old soccer team, that 10-year-old lacrosse team, all right? That youth football team that doesn't care about the backups. They get the minimum amount of snaps possible, and then that's it. Well, those backups might be starters on the high school team one day. And if you're a high school coach and there's youth coaches doing that stuff, you might want to get involved if you want to win at the high school level. If you don't want to win, then don't take the job, or just do the least amount of work possible. It's got to be a well-rounded approach. Kids are inactive, so what are we going to do? Cut them from sports. Participation is down across the board, youth all the way up to high school. So what do? We cut kids. Doesn't make sense to my mind. Stop cutting kids. Get more kids out for sport. If you love your sport, if you want your sport to have a successful team at the high school level, keep them out. Don't cut them. Get more kids out. If that kid's not, look at these big football teams. Look at, if you're an incoming freshman, if anybody's ever played football out there, if you're a freshman, you're going to be standing around a lot at practice. And that's okay. You stay out because you know eventually you might be a starter. You might get to play. And there's some kids that just love being around their teammates that they'll go and they'll stand around at practice for a good chunk of it, right? They need to be practice, on the scout team. They could pretend they're the opposition. You have more bodies out, the better practices you have. The more bodies you have out, the more rest your starters could have, right? If you're only worried about the starters, and we could start spinning this in a way that'll benefit you too, coach. All right, so more players, more rest. More players, more practice opportunity, more training opportunities. You're going to have a scout team, right? If you're a high school soccer team and you only have 15 kids on it, you cannot play a full game scrimmage against your own team. It's not going to happen. If you're a football program that only has 25 kids out, you might not be able to go 11 versus 11 because you might not have enough linemen. You might not have enough quarterbacks. You might not have enough wide receivers, right? Or, some of those guys might be rotating in. You're not going to have enough guys. You're not going to have enough girls if you're a soccer coach or a lacrosse coach or a field hockey coach to run a full scrimmage. That's a problem. That really limits what you could do in training and practice. Last part, keep them out. Competition brings the best out of you. The bigger schools around here, they have big rosters, right? Because of that, there's always somebody kind of pushing those starters for their spot. So those starters have to stay sharp. When you don't have the depth, those starters, if they're not self-motivated, if they need a little bit of push from a backup, or they need a little bit of, hey, I could just kind of coast my way through practice and start on Monday because I know there's not even a backup here. Like, I'm going to be starting, right? Would you rather have kids have that vibe, or the vibe of like, there's somebody behind me. They're a freshman. They're a sophomore. We didn't cut them. Now they're freaking good because they kept training. They kept working. Now they're going to be coming for my spot. And if I don't stay sharp, they're taking my spot. Stop cutting kids. Get the numbers up. You want kids to be active? You want to build a good high school program? Get more kids out for your sport at the young levels. Keep fostering. Keep coaching. Keep developing. You never know who's going to be a great high school player, right? Hope you guys like this one. Like the podcast. Leave a review on Apple. Leave a review anywhere. YouTube. Subscribe, please. Share this with anybody that you think it applies. I'm back from vacation. We're going to be pumping these out more and more now. Yeah, man. Everything that we're doing here, this podcast right now, is just kind of supporting the business that we have running here, where we're trying to develop the youth, where we're trying to get more people involved in exercise. We're trying to get more people involved in athletics so that they could have a more well-rounded life. And we're trying to we're trying to plant the seed for a lifetime of physical fitness, man, so we can be as healthy mentally and physically as possible. Peace, everybody.